Welcome to the Fellas Podcast, the ultimate Formula One podcast for fans by fans, where we discuss all the happenings in the world of Formula One. Now, let's get into it.
Hey everyone, this is Simon from Benevo, where we are supporting our next Formula One racer out of the United States. Hey, come and join us for our inaugural 2025 sweepstakes, where we're going to be giving away 2 tickets. That's right, 2 tickets to Miami. You get a 2-day pass at a 2025 Formula One Miami Grand Prix for Saturday, May 3rd through the 5th. That's right, you get 3-night stay at a serene hotel from Friday through Monday. And you also get 2 daily breakfasts. It'll be great. Off the track, you'll unwind in a 4-star serene hotel with stunning panoramic views where opulent comforts awaits. Come and join us. The tickets for this sweepstakes are pretty cheap. They start from $10 to $100, and you guys get the opportunity to go to Miami. It's worth over $6,000 for this prize, so please come on, join us. And you will be supporting a good cause. We will be supporting our next Formula One racer. His name is Truly Adams, and you're helping him get to the next level. So, see you in Miami.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Fellas Podcast. This week, you're joined by Simon and me. Ray will be back next week. As always, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to stay up to date on all things the Fellas. So, Simon, the Mexico Grand Prix. We could just get into it. What did you think of the start?
The start of the Mexican Grand Prix, it was good. It was entertaining. You know, I think everyone was at the edge of their seats. I know I was. Definitely one for the record books as far as making sure the penalties stood place today. I think Verstappen had a great launch. He really got that car to the point where he was in front of Carlos for a little bit, and obviously was able to maintain the lead at the first corner. But then, you know, a lot of things broke loose after that first run down the track. I do want to say that I'm starting to really love the Mexico City track. It reminds me of Monza a little bit with all the straights and a little bit of Spa. And to me, that's having, 3 major straights and a lot of curves on a track. To me, it brings out entertainment. So yeah, I think the start was good. I think there was one, in my opinion, there was one driver that was very aggressive, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But you tell me, what did you think about the start?
Yeah, I thought it was good. Max got a really good start on Carlos and got the jump on him and took first place. You know, it just seemed like he just got a better start. It didn't look like Carlos made a bad start. It's just Max got a better one. But everything really turned around when it got to the point between Max and Lando. But Carlos, to his credit, pressured and stuck in and was able to get back past Max on lap 9 to regain the lead. And I thought that was a really good pass on him. And especially after last week's race where Lando was saying, and everyone has said, Max is very difficult to pass. It showed, and I forgot who it was, if it was James Hinchcliffe that said that, it might have been James, I'm not sure, but said that, Lando really has to dig deep to have more in his bag of tricks to be able to get past, a driver like Max. Carlos showed that. Carlos, was able to get by him and push on and regain the lead. He got it done. So I credit him for that. If he caught Max sleeping, shame on Max. You're not out there on a picnic. But the one where it really heated up was between Max and Lando, especially coming off of last week's race with the penalties that were put up against Lando. Here we see Max with that same kind of, what I have to say is dirty driving. Dive bombing, not intending to take the corner, but just want to prevent you from getting through, pushing you off track. It's good to see he got the penalty this week.
Absolutely. I agree. I think all the noise that took place last week and during the week really people noticed, or people were making sure that they were had their eye on the stewards this week,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And how are they going to react to those two aggressive moves that
Yeah.
Max did?
Yeah.
And he pushed him off on the first move
Yeah.
and really took advantage of pushing him off on the second move
Right.
and never yield back the position. So him
Right.
getting the 20-second penalty, I thought was justified. We're late in the season. Everyone wants to see it come down to the wire like it did in 2020 with Max and Lewis. And I think we're getting there. I think Norris is now 47 points away, so that's a race and a half
Yeah.
if there's a DNF
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
two DNFs.
Yeah.
But this race, I don't think put enough pressure on Max. I think Max still feels this is his to lose. But 4 races left.
It is still his to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's his to lose. And you know what? He's driving that. Well, taking the penalty, the dirty driving out. He is driving to ensure that he wins it, because I was going to say it later on, but when he was in front of, before they put out the penalty on him, he was driving a race to make sure that Lando, he was slowing down to push Lando back away from the Ferraris, because Max is not racing that. He's not. He would love to win, but he knows that's not his goal. His goal is to finish ahead of Lando. And he wanted to make sure that if he could back him up enough away from the Ferraris and keep him behind him, he can't score maximum points, right? So that's why it was so important that when they did levy the penalties on him, it changed everything around again. And look what happened. Exactly what he was doing. You saw that Lando came and caught Charles, but we'll get to that. So I'm just saying Max is driving a very strategic race.
Very strategic. And just to get back to the start question that you asked earlier, I think Yuki Tsunoda was driving a little reckless today. That was just my opinion. He touched Albon's tire twice before they had that accident. I mean, they were touching, and in my opinion, that should let both drivers know, all right, you guys are a little too close. One of you is going to have to yield before there's an accident. And of course, there was an accident, and I know there's 3 drivers involved. I know you're going to get to talk about that a little bit, but I still think Tsunoda could have given more space or yielded based on the position that he was, because he wasn't going to be able to go out the outside and pass, in my opinion, Albon. But tell me what you thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, I could concede it was a little ambitious to go through, to go on the outside there, but I think. I think it's I don't think it was reckless. I think that he saw it and he was trying to push. I've seen in the past some drivers where they put 2 wheels off the track on the grass and made a pass stick. And we celebrated it. Like, oh my God, like it could have been that. But what happened was Gasly was on the inside of Albon and moved over slightly towards the left. Albon moved over slightly to avoid, probably didn't realize Yuki was there and touched. And that was the end of it. I felt bad for Albon and Yuki with that one. I think it was really just a racing incident, I think. But I don't think Yuki was being reckless on it, in my opinion. I think he was just, he was trying to see if he could get it done. And they're all bunched up back there. There was nowhere really to go. It's either you're going to lift to just stay where you are, and that's not why they're on that track. You're not really there to lift. Like you're trying to get around the person as best you can.
I might have to agree with you. I don't know if I'm feeling comfortable doing that right now, but yeah, I think I might have to agree with you. I just thought there was more space that could have been given there on the first lap. But man, that track and that first initial start along that straight, man, I was watching it with a bunch of people, and everyone was at the edge of their seat to see what was going to happen.
Yeah,
and, there haven't really been a lot of crashes this year. I think everyone's been driving pretty smart and pretty safety oriented. But yeah, it was the edge of the seat. I wanted to see Lando actually overtake Verstappen because of his position at third, but it didn't work out. What do you think about Sainz's overall race?
What
Ferrari for that matter.
The bit of it that we saw, because they really didn't focus on them too much, which I understand. He drove a great race. Carlos, it's I feel it for him that he's about to leave a team that he's driven well for. You could say that he deserves to be there based on his drive, and now he's about to leave to go to a team that, if you're judging Ferrari as of this moment, the other team is not as strong as them. So the hope is that he when he gets in, that he can have an opportunity like he has here. So for him to win before he leaves, and he said that's one of his goals, is great. And he's going to try to win a couple more if he can. But the Ferrari car definitely seems to be switched on now.
I'm not sure what transpired in the middle of this season, but yes, Ferrari has definitely stepped up their game. And thankfully, sounds like Lewis would have a solid car next year. I'm sure there's going to be upgrades. Yeah. I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of things that can definitely derail it a little bit here as far as production and ingenuity. Ferraris right now, the last two races came in first and second, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
The last two.
Yeah.
Well, first, second.
No, not this one. Last race, they did it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so they are really close in the constructors, if I'm not mistaken. I think right now they're 537 and McLaren is 566. So they're really only 31 points, 29 points behind.
Yeah, they're ahead of Red Bull.
Yeah. Which can't sit well with Red Bull at this point, but
that brings me to what I said in the past. The reason Red Bull is where they are in the Constructors' Championship is due to Sergio's lack of performance. You have these other teams having two cars scoring points, and they've only had Max. So
carrying the whole team on his shoulders.
Well, yeah, Max is racing for the driver's title. The constructors is how the teams are paid out money. So that's a hit. Yeah. That's a hit. So right now, if the season ended now, you have McLaren winning the constructors, and you have Ferrari second, Red Bull third. So that's less money. They're not gonna like that. But anyway,
Lewis will.
Yeah,
Lewis will like it and get his money for next year. I was watching the race and I heard the commentators say something that I didn't really put two and two together until after they said it. But they said next year is going to be so interesting as far as the season is concerned, because you're going to have 3 to 4 different teams competing for the championship, and they all are going to be on the same kind of level playing field. Right, you're going to have Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, and possibly Mercedes, right? And there is no clear-cut advantage team right now like there was in the last 2 years as far as Red Bull. Right, it's going to be a great season next year. I'm not wishing for it to end and start next season, but what I'm saying is because the end to this season is still not completely written, right? That's not written. Right. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a good season next year.
Yeah, if they all can keep this forward momentum with their cars going, it would be a very good season, because I can't recall where there were more than maybe 2 teams battling. I can't recall, and I've been watching Formula One since the 90s, so I can't fully recall that, but it would be good to see. It's interesting that it's a shame Ferrari switched on at the end of the season. So I mean, they could have been battling for the drivers' championship as well, but
LeClerc's not that far behind. I mean, statistically he can still win, but Verstappen has to DNF for the next 4 races. Right, and then that puts Lando kind of in front too. So LeClerc would have to win all the races. Verstappen would have to lose. So statistically, they can win, but it's probably unlikely based on Red Bull's
the lead they have.
Yeah, the lead they have.
Right. So, but now that we're on Lewis, You were saying that you heard something in the commentators were saying about
Yeah,
Lewis?
the commentators were saying, whether or not it was tongue in cheek, but they were saying how Lewis is not part of the strategy meetings anymore, because it's coming down to the end of the season, and they're gonna carry over what they have learned on the car into next season, and they don't want Ferrari to have that advantage on them, which kind of explains why, to a certain degree, why George Russell had all the upgrades on his car from his last crash and
Mhm.
Lewis didn't, right? So begs the question, how was Lewis able to pass Russell today? I hit you with three different topics there, but yeah, Lewis is
Yeah,
not really part of the team anymore at this point.
yeah. Well, that makes sense. Yeah, getting towards the end in the past, teams will, they may start talking about things that are going to carry over, like you said, to next year, and they don't want him to be part of that. So they I don't want to say freeze you up, but they don't include you in those conversations or those things. So it's not a surprise. And as far as him passing George today, I know George did have a little bit of damage on his front wing.
Mm,
May have played into that a little, because it's not that Lewis walked by him, but again, if Lewis also doesn't have the upgrades, it says a lot. I mean, hey, he's a 7-time world champion. Lewis is proven who he is. So even if he had a bad season, in my mind, it doesn't say anything. He just had a bad season. Maybe it's the car, maybe it's whatever. Like he's mentally strong. But I'm glad. I'll say it, as a Lewis fan, I was glad that he made the pass on George eventually,
oh yeah.
and on him. But yeah, all that other stuff, I'm not surprised. They're not gonna keep you in it. And I forgot the race. Was it Belgium where George won, but then the car got disqualified for
Yes.
the weight? And I believe it was no, it was Kim Illman that he said he was photographing there, and he saw, after they were all congratulating George and giving him hugs and everything, and he said Lewis was kind of like just off to himself, like the team wasn't really paying him any attention, and he came in
Hmm.
second until George got disqualified, and he now became the race winner. You know, how can I say it? I don't know of any good breakups. This is always going to be a problem. Maybe years down the road, then they were like, they can mend.
Good
So I'm not
breakups.
surprised. I'm
Well,
not
yeah,
surprised.
that's yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I think, today Lewis was being kind as far as leaving room and space. It took him 10 laps to pass George Russell. I don't think he's going to be kind next year, right? I don't
No,
think that's
no,
mm-mm.
no, no, no. You shouldn't
He's
be.
going to force George to drive that car.
Right. You don't want to crash as an F1 driver,
Hmm.
and in the event you do, you definitely do not want to crash into your teammate, right? Because that's a problem. So that's why the message came over that to George. I heard it. You're free to race, but under the undercurrent of that is, don't take each other out,
Right.
because
Leave room. That's what he was
leave
saying.
room.
Give each other enough space. Right.
Right,
Yeah, I heard
right,
that
right,
as well.
right,
So,
right.
with that being said, because we've talked about a lot of things today, about Ferrari, about Mercedes, about Lewis, Max
Mhm,
Verstappen.
mhm.
I had a question for you that I've been holding back for a little bit. Who's going to be Ferrari's number one driver next year?
Well,
Yeah, boy.
I think, okay, yes, you have Lewis is a 7-time world champion, so he's coming with that. But I think it's also going to matter on how quickly he can get up to speed, and getting up to speed on a car that he had no input in its design or its
Mm.
characteristics.
Mm.
Charles had that, and possibly Carlos to some degree at some point, but I would more so say Charles had that. So it's going to test his ability, that you have to come in, see what this car is. Yes, they can make certain tweaks, and they usually will do that to try to suit the driver. So to answer it is, who's going to be the number one? It depends on how the first few races go. If Lewis can come in there and get on top of that car, and get on top of Charles, he'll be number one, you know? But Ferrari now doesn't seem to be the Ferrari of the Michael Schumacher era, where that's the number one, you're number two, and you stay in your place. They seem to give their drivers the opportunity, right? And I know it's some teams they used to say, like, if they really had a good car and two good drivers, maybe the first half of the season, whoever's in front, that's who we're backing. That's number one. Then the other one has to fill in. It could be a situation like that. But I think it's up in the air when he gets there.
Do they make money off of marketing? I'm assuming they do, because to me, they're the teams, right? I mean, Carlos versus Lewis, I'm assuming Lewis brings more
I would think
branding
Sure.
and marketing and I would think that would play a role to some degree. But you're right. I think if I was the Ferrari owner, I'd sit down with both of them and I'd say, hey, listen, both of you, in my opinion, are number one drivers. You're the best drivers in the world, right? I'm going to support you guys equally until.
And that's probably right. That's what I'm saying. That's the old Ferrari would have been different, but the new Ferrari, yes, that's what they'll do, and they may come to a point where whoever's ahead at this point, let's say halfway through the season or whatever, or maybe a little before, whoever's ahead, that's who we're going to support. That's the number one.
But they have to be ahead significantly. They can't be ahead by 10 points.
No,
right?
No, it has to be significant.
Yeah. So there's got to be, and so the until might come to the last race for all we know. Right?
It could.
Right. So that's how I would phrase it. And of course they'll ask questions. What does until mean? Well, until means until I see a reason to back one person over the other. Right. You guys have your fate in your own hands as far as your individual branding.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, not even the McLaren team now, which we saw, because Piastri is good. I think he's equally as good as Lando. He has that ability. But during the Mercedes went through it with Lewis and Nico, and McLaren went through it with Lewis and Fernando. But not McLaren now, McLaren then. That is a very it's a very delicate balance, and it's chaos, and you have to know how to manage it, because they nitpick everything, strategy, everything. And you got people not sharing. It can tear the team apart from inside if you have very strong drivers that are fighting.
I just see with Charles' personality and Lewis's personality now from a maturation standpoint, where Lewis was maybe 10 years ago, I probably see him and Charles with butt heads. But based on his experience and based on Charles' personality, they can easily win the constructors points next year. If they work together.
If the car is good, yeah.
Right. And I think it should be. Look, I mentioned this last week about Lando and Verstappen being really close, and Norris has to kind of hate him if he wants to win, or see him as an enemy on the track.
You mean Lando and Piastri?
No, Lando and Verstappen.
Oh, Lando.
I'm leading up to something. So I remember I told you, since they're friends, it all comes down to being friends. And I've actually played against people in basketball who are really close, who I played with at school, but when we're on opposite teams, I didn't know you, right? And but when we play together, oh yeah, we're clicking, we're on the same team, and I think that's how LeClerc and Lewis should start the season. And I think if it's close, then all hands. I think Ferrari should just let them figure it out on their own, right? And I'm hoping that happens, because I think it'd be interesting not only for Formula One, but for the fans of Ferrari as well.
I think that's exactly how it'll go if they're both competitive, because remember, Lewis and Nico were like, they came up through karting together and yada yada yada, and they the friend label has been put out with them, and the start of that 2007 season, early races, you could see certain places where you're like, this is going to be interesting, but they were still friendly. But as it went on and they were close, that separation happened. It has to. It's natural. So
it has to. It has to be if you want to be a champion.
yeah. And listen, Lewis, I've said it. World champions, they all can be dickish when they're ready. And I admire Lewis, and he's a great world champion. But when he's ready, he knows what he's there for. He's not there to make friends. He's there to win another title, or 2 if he can, or 3, whatever. He's gonna go for it. He doesn't need to talk.
Yeah.
He don't need to.
Man, it's going to be interesting next year because there's so many ways it can go. It can go Lando's way. It can go Piastri's way. It can go Verstappen's way. It can go LeClerc's way. It can go Lewis's way.
Mm-hmm.
It's so many. The first 5 races are going to be like, people are going to be this.
Yeah.
I think the ratings are going to be ridiculous next year, to be honest.
Well, I'll say this. Not Lando. Charles is going to really have to be on his game. Like I said, if Lewis comes in and can get comfortable with the car and start to extract the maximum from it, just like Charles most likely will be able to, because he was there to help give input on when they were designing it, it's going to be fun. It's going to be very interesting, But even like to go back to Mexico, like with Charles, I won't say it's pressure. When Lando was closing on him and he lost the rear of the car, it seemed that he might have put the power down a little too early and lost the back. I mean, hats off to him for grabbing it back, because he could have easily ended up in the wall, but he grabbed it back. But those are things like when you have, like Carlos was way down the road, like that can end your race so quick. So he's going to have to really get on top of all of that, because I think we know Lewis can pressure a driver into making a mistake, so.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I just want to make sure it's clear that my predictions came in true this week.
You had Carlos?
I said Ferrari. Yeah, I know. I don't know if I said Carlos, but I said Ferrari and McLaren, and possibly Verstappen. Verstappen would have probably come in 3rd. Who knows?
Right.
Or 4th, but Mercedes got that. So anyway, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting between Lewis and Charles for sure. I think whatever happens between them in the off season is going to have to really solidify their friendship as far as moving forward for Ferrari. But I think individually they're going to have to just make some boundaries, right? And say, hey, if you're in the lead in the race and I'm coming up behind you, let's just cleanly go for it, right? Cleanly go for it.
Yeah, I'm not. I'll say this. Listen, Lewis, he's had Nico, he's had Jenson Button as a teammate. He has had Fernando. He had Heikki Kovalainen for a little while. He had
Bottas
as his teammate. But
that was a good teammate. That was a good tandem. Him and Bottas. They really worked together.
But you know why that worked, right? Because Bottas was clearly the number 2, and Lewis was number 1. So Lewis didn't really have to worry about him too much, right?
He won races. He
did, but he wasn't a Fernando. He wasn't like when Lewis and Fernando.
He was already a world champion.
Right. Well, no, Lewis wasn't even world champion yet, but Fernando was a 2-time.
Fernando was.
Yeah, was 2-time. But Lewis showed that he was on that level, and that was a problem within the team. Here Nico, when Nico had to up his game, to try and catch Lewis, to get on top of that. But something that I wanted to say about Max, and I said it before, that he's running a really strategic race, that he's really said he knows who he's racing, and he's racing Lando. And it reminded me of, I think it was 2012 Abu Dhabi. Nico needed to finish as high as I think 6th place to get the championship. Lewis was leading the Grand Prix, and Lewis was driving, which is what I feel Max was doing today when he was in front of Lando to back him off of the Ferraris. Lewis was driving a race and was driving just fast enough that it was backing up the rest of the field, because he was trying to back Nico up into Verstappen, so Verstappen could take that 6th place from him, and then he wouldn't win the title. These are the strategic, and it's no fault. I wasn't mad at Max for what he was trying to do when they said it. I was like, yeah, he should do that. He's racing him, but that's what they do. That's.
Yeah. I mean, it's the game within the game, right?
Game within the game.
Yeah. So yeah,
it's Fernando. This season, I believe he was racing somebody. He was like, they came over the radio and they were like, oh yeah, he's behind you. And Fernando was like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm keeping him there. He can destroy his tires. It's the game within the game. He knew what he was doing. He could run off, but he's not. He's keeping his car just fast enough to keep that turbulence on you that you're trying to catch him and you're going to destroy your tires. So,
that's skill.
Yeah.
Still, let's just say a lap time is 1:17, right, and you're doing like 1:17.9, just right, so. Right. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. They're reading and they know. So that's the game within the game. Right. So what are your predictions for next year? The next race?
Brazil.
Beautiful track.
Ferrari's hot right now. I don't know if McLaren and Red Bull are going to have anything to slow them down unless something crazy happens. It is a shorter track.
Right.
So that might play into the strategy of Ferrari. But I think I'm going to go with Ferrari again and McLaren. Matter of fact, no, McLaren and Ferrari, then Red Bull. I'm not picking a driver. I'm just going to pick a team. So it's going to be McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull.
Okay. I'm going to go with Lando, Max, and I'm not sure. I want to say. No, I'm going to say Lando, Max, and Oscar. Because the McLarens are hot. Both of those cars are fast. They're the fastest. So I think I'm going to roll the dice and say that. Lando for the
win. I'm with you on McLaren.
Yeah.
I just think Ferrari has really stepped up. Let's see what they do with a more of an oval track, short track, more turns. And that would tell me whether or not the next 4 races are going to be Ferrari, McLaren, or Red Bull.
Well, I'm going to bring back the spirit of next race, Ray, and say that Ferrari, they got to do it the next race. So I'm here, bro. I'm here.
All right.
Then I'm like, okay. Yes, they've done it 2 races in a row. Can you do 3? Then I'll start to think about it. But I still think the McLaren is the most consistent car out there. Both drivers are good. Poor Oscar didn't have a good qualify, so he had to fight his way back up, but he did. Lando is good, and if Lando can get in front of Max and stay there, I think he'll run away with it.
I have a feeling that Verstappen is going to have a bad week as well. He's either going to have a bad week or a really good week. I don't think it's going to be in between.
Well, no, I mean, I don't know. I don't wish a DNF on anyone,
No, I don't.
Right.
I'm not saying that. I'm just remembering how he was with Lewis. When the things got tight, he got foolish.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's good that they put the 20-second penalty on him now, because now he knows, hey, I can't just go out there and dive bomb these guys like I used to anymore, right? He might chance it again to see if he gets away with it, but you may not. That's 20 seconds. It's safer just to be easy, So we'll see. So, okay, everyone. That's it for the fellas for this week. We'll look forward to seeing you again for the Grand Prix in Brazil. And hopefully Ferrari, to help Simon out, will come through. But I still feel it's McLaren for the win. With that, please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned for everything the fellas. We'll see you at the next race in Brazil.
See you later, everyone.